First thing we do, take $6 million and build a time machine. Where would you go first, huh?
March 17th, 1984. Day I took my first bribe. You.
It's easy. May 10, 1965. That's the day Warren Buffett took over at Berkshire Hathaway. I figure, got $1 million left from building the time machine, so I take my half and just stick it into Berkshire. And then I come back here and I'm a billionaire.
That's it, honey.
What else?
When I think of Jimmy McGill, I think of this scene right here with Mike. You think about how much his character has gone through. Losing his mom, losing Chuck, the number of lives he has intentionally or unintentionally destroyed. Yet, this is what Jimmy would want to change from the past. It's a powerful moment because we get a clearer idea of what Jimmy McGill truly wants.
You're a teensy tiny man in a teensy weensy little bubble.
No, Jimmy.
Oh, don't you f***ing old Jimmy me.
When I first watched Breaking Bad, the universe the writers built had me glued to the screen. All the characters and how they exist and act in relation to each other opened my eyes to new ways stories could be told. One character that stood out in this sea of misfits was the sleazy lawyer Saul Goodman. I loved the guy. His unapologetic trash personality was just straight up funny.
Clearly his taste in women is the same as his taste in lawyers, only the very best, with just the right amount of dirty.
So when I found out they gave this character his own show, I was floored, especially after watching Breaking Bad. I had to see what Vince Gilligan and Peter Gould had in store for me next. But that's when I was introduced to...
Please call me Jimmy.
We realized this is a backstory, and I'm pumped. I can't wait to see Jimmy McGill turn into Saul Goodman. I get more impatient for it to happen every season. Until it finally does. After 6 seasons of waiting, the writers finally give us what we wanted from the very beginning, and it's painful. It actually hurts to see Jimmy turn into this guy. It was fine when that was all we knew him as, but now we've witnessed Jimmy's whole story, and we know deep down he's not that guy. A certain part of him might be, but we know how much more he is and can be. We want him to be good. The kind of good he is when he's with Kim. Granted, they both did some messed up things together, but they hadn't given up on the idea of being better. After leaving Kim, Jimmy accepts Saul as his true identity and lets go of the moral obligations tied to Jimmy. And it serves him well. He gets everything he ever wanted. Everything we, the audience, always wanted him to have. The fact is, he always was a crooked lawyer. The writers gave us all the signs. This was just the first time in the show he fully accepted it. They say greatness requires a hefty sacrifice. Greatness for Jimmy being a nice car, a mansion, and a successful law career. The sacrifice? Well, Jimmy himself. It's easy to think Jimmy McGill's story is about chasing success. That if you strip away the scams, the fake mustaches and burner phones, you're left with a guy who just wanted to make it. But that's too simple. If you really pay attention, Jimmy gets most of the things he wants long before he becomes Saul Goodman. The degree, the office, the clients, the respect of peers, but they never stick. The truth is, Jimmy doesn't want success. He wants it his way. And here's where the tragedy begins, because his way is incompatible with the world he's trying to conquer. Jimmy hates rules. Not because he's lazy, but because rules feel like cages to him. The moment you tell him, this is how things are done, he can't help but look for a loophole, a shortcut, a trick, or a better way. Even when he's genuinely being a good guy, helping old ladies with their wills, helping that old guy keep his land from Mesa Verde. There's always a restless energy beneath the surface. It's Slippin' Jimmy peeking through. The kid from Cicero who learned that bending the rules is faster, funnier, and more rewarding than playing it straight. We see it with the $50 tequila scam, a moment so small it barely registers when it happens, but in retrospect, it's everything. He's on the cusp of a legitimate legal career at Davis and Maine, exactly what James McGill should want, but the con calls to him like gravity. He can't resist the thrill. This is symbolically shown by his old coffee mug not fitting in his new expensive car's cup holder. This is where Chuck comes in. Chuck isn't just Jimmy's older brother. He's the embodiment of the world's judgment towards Jimmy. Cold, rule-bound, unbending. Chuck knows Jimmy can't go without bending the rules. His philosophy is that people can't change. that some folks just don't belong on the straight path. The scholarship scene hammers this home. When Jimmy encourages the girl who lied on her application to keep lying, it's him refusing Chuck's worldview. And then there's Kim. If Chuck is the world's judgment, Kim is the world's hope. She sees the best in Jimmy. Not the con man, but the guy who'd work overnight for a client, who'd take a personal risk to protect someone. Together, they become partners in crime. Literally. And when Kim walks away, she's not just leaving Jimmy, she's removing the last tether to the man he could have been. That's when Saul Goodman is born. And we finally get the guy from Breaking Bad. And it feels hollow. It's like ordering a meal you've been craving for years, only to find it cold. We, the audience, have been complicit, rooting for his rise, waiting for that moment, but the second it arrives, we realize what it cost. Not just Kim, not just Chuck, but Jimmy himself.
Wait, Jimmy, what?
It's all good, man.
Philosophers have warned us about this forever. The Greeks had the myth of King Midas, whose wish to turn everything he touched into gold left him starving. Oscar Wilde wrote, "When the gods wish to punish us, they answer our prayers." Jimmy's tragedy is a modern retelling. He got everything he ever wanted, but in getting it, he killed the part of himself that made him human. The time machine scene with Mike makes this explicit. Jimmy talks about going back to change a moment, but it's all surface level. A con artist even in his regrets. When Walter White asks him the same question, Walt calls him out.
So you were always like this?
And maybe Walt's right. Jimmy McGill's animosity towards Howard Hamlin is one of the most emotionally charged threads in Better Call Saul, but it's also one of the most misunderstood, even by Jimmy himself. On the surface, it looks like class resentment. Howard is polished, privileged, and everything Jimmy isn't. But that's dangerously reductive. Howard isn't the shallow rich antagonist Jimmy paints him to be. In many ways, Howard genuinely tries to see Jimmy's potential. Take the early job offers. Howard doesn't dismiss Jimmy's work ethic or intelligence outright. Instead, he gives him a role at HHM after Jimmy passes the bar, albeit in the mailroom. Jimmy interprets this as humiliation, but Howard's resistance is largely fueled by Chuck, not Howard's own prejudice. When the Chuck blockade is gone, Howard revisits working together multiple times, including during the Sandpiper settlement arc. These aren't empty gestures, they're genuine invitations. Jimmy's rejections aren't principled stands against elitism, they're emotional refusals to accept that his enemy could also be his benefactor.
I travel in worlds you can't even imagine. You can't conceive of what I'm capable of. I'm so far beyond you. I'm like a god in human clothing. Lightning bolts shoot from my fingertips.
The scholarship scene serves as a good example here as well. When Howard asks Jimmy to speak to the young recipients, Jimmy singles out a girl with a shoplifting record, telling her to play the game and work the angles. On paper, it's rebellious mentorship. In reality, Jimmy projects his worldview, forged in that childhood sheep and wolves moment, onto a situation where it doesn't belong.
There are wolves and sheep in this world, kid. Wolves and sheep. Figure out which one you're gonna be.
Howard sees a future for her within the system. Jimmy sees a rigged game to be manipulated. It's a microcosm of their ideological clash. Howard believes in working the ladder, Jimmy believes the ladder's a scam. The pranks, bowling balls over the wall, hookers sent to embarrass him are a turning point. They're not harmless jabs anymore. They're sustained psychological warfare. Here's the counter-argument. Jimmy isn't retaliating against a tyrant. He's manufacturing a villain so he can feel righteous in tearing him down. Howard's biggest crime is existing as a mirror Jimmy does not want to look into. A man who plays by the rules, navigates privilege, but still works hard and carries himself with dignity. If Howard was truly the arrogant fraud Jimmy imagined, Jimmy's attacks might make sense. But Howard is sincere and principled, making Jimmy's cruelty harder to justify. Jimmy's self-pity and narrative building become dangerous. He convinces himself Howard had it all handed to him, ignoring that Howard also bears the weight of keeping HHM afloat, supporting Chuck, and managing the public family fallout. In reality, Jimmy and Howard are more alike than Jimmy wants to admit. Both live under expectations, both struggle in the shadows of greater personalities, and both perform versions of themselves for the world. The difference? Howard leans into grace, Jimmy leans into grievance. When Howard dies, it's not because Jimmy wished him harm. It's because Slippin' Jimmy unleashed forces he couldn't control. The tragedy is, Howard wasn't the wolf Jimmy imagined, just another sheep wearing better clothes. And Jimmy didn't realize it until it was too late. After Saul Goodman's empire crumbled, Jimmy McGill vanished into the grey. Gene Takovic, A man who blended in so well you could walk past him 100 times and never remember his face. A life so quiet, so suffocating, it was practically witness protection without paperwork. For a while, he played the part. No cons, no schemes, just cinnamon rolls and silence. But the thing about people like Saul Goodman is, they don't retire. Not really. That itch, the rush of control, of bending the world to your will, never really goes away. So when the opportunity came, Gene started running scams again. Not entirely because he needed the money, but because that's who he is when no one's watching. Those black and white scenes show us something chilling. Saul Goodman might have been the performance, but the performer? That was always Jimmy. Gene was supposed to be the cure, but instead, he proved the sickness had been there all along, which is why the finale hit so hard. The man we see in that courtroom isn't just Saul seeking the spotlight, or Jimmy chasing redemption. It's the same restless soul who couldn't stop himself from picking up the con again, even in exile. By the time we meet Saul in those final seasons, he's perfected being cold. When Kim walks into his office to finalize the divorce, he doesn't even flinch. He's not James McGill anymore, just a walking billboard in a flashy suit. When Jesse asks Kim,
This guy, any good?
When I knew him, he was.
this wasn't nostalgia. This was a eulogy. James was dead. But in the finale, something cracks. In the courtroom, Saul Goodman could have taken a lighter sentence. He could have walked out with a deal that would have made other lawyers jealous. But he doesn't. Instead, he stands up and burns the Saul Goodman persona to the ground, outing himself, confessing to his role in everything, and demanding the maximum sentence. Why? Maybe guilt, maybe the final con, except this time the mark is himself. Or maybe it's his first act in years that wasn't about winning, but telling the truth. In that moment, he isn't the cold divorce signing lawyer. He isn't the smooth talker hustling his way out of consequences. He's James McGill again. And I can't help but feel that there's a certain level of redemption in that last scene in the prison yard with Kim. A shared cigarette like the many they shared after every calamity, a moment of quiet. But this time, there's no elaborate scheme or plan on how to get out of this. Just two people who can never undo what they've done, but can still acknowledge each other across the wreckage, leaving things the way they are, finally holding themselves accountable for their actions. It's over. Saul's gone. James McGill is behind bars. But with good behavior, who knows?